Welcome to Franchise Canada Chats, the podcast that takes you inside the world of Canadian franchising. I'm Renée Boudakian, founder and CEO of Rubicon Franchise Partners, and your host for Season 9. This season, we're going beyond the business model to uncover the real stories of franchise owners, the risks they took, the lessons they learned, and the successes they built. Join us as we sit down with franchisees, their franchisors, and industry experts to discuss emerging trends, cutting-edge technologies, and operational strategies shaping the future of franchising. Whether you're thinking about buying your first or next franchise, this podcast is your inside track to franchise success in Canada. Welcome to Franchise Canada Chats. Today we're sitting down with Justin Enns, a franchisee who owns 3 locations of CertaPro Painter in Calgary and Central Alberta. You've probably seen a yellow CertaPro Painters van out on the job, as it's the largest franchise residential and commercial painting company in North America. But for Justin, this system was also about being in a family business. Justin joined his first CertaPro business with his father in 2017 and then took over the business in 2023. Under his leadership, his business has grown more and more every year, from a small family business to a mini empire with 10 office staff, 8 employee painters, and many business partners. Today, we'll learn how Justin manages change, his growing team, and balances life with business ownership. Justin, welcome to Franchise Canada Chats.
Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. So I'd love to get right into your story and have you share with us, before you joined your father and before you joined the CertaPro business in 2017, what was your life like before franchising? What was your career background?
So I did the standard business degree, came out of university thinking I was going to be a financial planner, and I didn't realize how much that was a sales role. So I didn't love that and was already being pigeonholed as a salesperson about a year after I started my career. So I figured I had to press reset on that. So I did my MBA, and came out of that with more of a focus on operations management. And then I joined Imperial Oil in supply chain, and I worked there for about 5 years, and kind of progressed, and didn't love working in a large organization. It was stable, but I never really wanted stable. I wanted some risk. I wanted some upside, and I didn't want to picture myself doing the same thing 20 years down the line. People I started with talked about their retirement savings and all that, and I was like, I don't even want to think about that yet. And I knew that was a smart thing to do, but I had a lot to do before I wanted to worry about retirement in 35 years. So always kind of wanted to do my own thing, and just struggled with what that leap would look like, from a job that was becoming more and more hard to walk away from, frankly. And so, my father bought into the CertaPro franchise system in 2015 with 1 location. And by the time 2017 rolled around, the conversations got a lot more serious about joining him. So I had to consider what he had to say at that point, given what I wanted to do with my life.
I love that. And do you recall, what were the conversations like with your dad in joining his location? And now that you've taken over, was that always the plan from the very beginning?
Well, it's funny because, and maybe this is a nepotism thing, but I worked with my dad numerous times. Actually, my dad worked at Imperial Oil, and I got an interview because he knew people still. So I did software testing in university for a company he owned. I worked at it when I first graduated and moved back to Calgary. I worked at a company he owned as well as like an office person. So I kind of kept getting pulled back into working with my dad. But when he bought this, I never thought it was like, I didn't think about it. I never really knew what it could become. So we didn't really have those conversations at first. But then by late 2016, early 2017, the conversation started to get into like, would I be happy running a painting company? Is that something I would want to do for a long time? Because for them, it was a way to turn some savings into an income for a number of years. And for me, I'm earlier on in my career, it really would become a long-term thing. And I remember my mom specifically asking me, would you be happy running a painting company? And I kind of said to her that, I think running a company, it doesn't really matter what the subject matter is. A lot of the things that go into running a company and leading an organization are kind of common throughout. I mean, regardless of your subject matter.
Totally. So would
Yeah.
you say, did you know anything about painting in particular, or was it more so you were eager and excited about running a business and as you said, this was the subject matter?
Yeah, I'd say it was definitely the latter. I still joke sometimes that like I don't know that much about paint. I know who to ask, and I know how to find answers, and I know people who know. And obviously, having done it for almost a decade now, I do know quite a bit about issues that have come up and problems we've had to solve. But it's never been about knowing how to paint. It's been about knowing who to find, knowing how to lean on the right resources.
Absolutely. That totally makes sense. And I think a hallmark of a good leader is not necessarily someone who has to have all the answers, but knows where to go to get the answers, or how to source that information so that you can come back to the team and share the answers, or come back to your customer and share the answers. So your dad was in the business for 2 years prior to you joining. So you had some familiarity with the CertaPro brand just by knowing he owned it and your proximity to him. What kind of due diligence did you do when he asked you to join with him in 2017? What kind of due diligence did you do to kind of do the checks and balances? Like, yes, this brand is in fact for me before you bought in.
I mean, the blunt answer is a lot less than I would have had I been taking this leap on my own. I've always had a very close relationship with my parents, and I trusted their judgment a lot. Um, Early on, I kind of like I've always gotten quite involved where I can, even at more of an associate level with groups within the brand. So just kind of doing that, I was able to expose myself very quickly to what are other businesses doing, how are different CertaPros, how are they being successful, where can we learn from that. And honestly, a big reason I was able to do that too is Howard, my dad, had always said that writing the royalty check to CertaPro was the easiest check he's ever written because the support was great. And I've haven't heard that is necessarily common of every franchisor, right? And so finding the right fit was very important. And I just, based on the conversations we had leading up to me joining, I kind of just had already known that they were getting a lot of support, and that their relationships with people, with other franchisees and the franchisor staff was very strong. So
Definitely. And one of the things that you had shared with me just before we got on was that you're obligated to pay royalties, but you're not obligated to take advantage of the resources that those royalties pay for. I'd love to know more about some of the support systems that that CertaPro offers and provides to their franchisees. What are those support systems that you continue to lean on and to use?
definitely. I mean, I think yeah, I kind of mentioned like you get out what you put in, and there's definitely like there's support within financial acumen. There's marketing support. There's every one of our approved vendors provides a service that I am not an expert in, be it social media management, search engine optimization. Even if there's IT support, like learning our technology systems. There's just a lot of items. There's when people first start with the brand, they join courses in CertaPro University, and you kind of learn all the little pieces that you would need to both go sell a painting project, estimate a painting project, manage crews, hire crews. So there's a lot of good resources just that you can learn at your own pace. And again, if you want to skip that and not look at those, I always say like do so at your peril, because then you're just trying to reinvent the wheel and why not lean on things that are already there and provided for us.
Definitely, definitely. So coming back to when you were joining the business, because usually, whether you're joining an existing business or you're starting a brand new business, there's going to be a capital requirement. You need to invest into the business. And so I'd love to hear from your side of what advice would you offer to someone who's looking for an opportunity that would fit with their net worth?
I mean, I think the key thing is look at your net worth. There are lots of franchise systems out there. You can go get involved in a franchise that requires you to put $1 million into it up front, right? But CertaPro and other, service-based businesses usually require less capital to start up because it's more about buying your franchise license and then, some startup cash flow. There's not a lot of equipment or capital required for investment. So, I mean, I think that it's a combination of look for a brand that aligns with your values that also meets that capital investment that you're able to put in. Obviously, if you go into a system that is more established, there, financing can be easier, but then you got to prove that you're the right person to manage that too. So I think looking for that blend of value alignment and what you want to put in to start, and obviously subject matter, because as much as I say like painting is a vehicle for owning and managing a business, you got to care about the vehicle too, at least to a degree. And yeah, I think that's just looking at those three pillars is key when you're trying to assess what's right for you.
And speaking of this vehicle, when you were kind of thinking about it, maybe growing up, did you think about owning a business and was franchising did you think I'm going to grow up to be a franchise owner?
No, I mean, I kind of, I think part of growing up, and I think this is probably common of many people who end up in entrepreneurship is, having no idea what I wanted to do. My dad honestly still jokes that he doesn't know what he wants to do with his life. And he's semi-retired. And I think the same kind of is true of me. Even now, like I don't know if this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I don't know. And so, I didn't know growing up what I wanted to do. And I, especially once I started to look at, okay, I would love to start or own or run a business. I didn't even know franchising was necessarily an option because you hear about the big. It's exactly what you were kind of mentioning about capital. Like you look at like a McDonald's and you're like, well, I don't have $1 million or $1.5 million to start one of these, and so it doesn't really seem like an option. So knowing what's out there is important and doing some, they're everywhere. And so no, franchising was not really in the cards for me until it kind of fell in my lap. And I'm very, very glad it did.
Absolutely. I think it's not uncommon. And I was just reflecting on when, many years ago when I was in high school, there was a careers class that we took, and they kind of talked about the different types of careers that you might get into. And nowhere on there was entrepreneurship, but that was like independent entrepreneurship. Nowhere on there was franchising really even discussed. And so, franchising is all around us and in so many different types of businesses and industries, but we really think of them as like the local CertaPro business, and we don't really think about the business model that powers it. So I think it's pretty cool how you ended up in franchising, and thanks, Dad, for seeing the vision.
100%.
Um, so how would you say, like, what would you say is your favorite thing about the CertaPro system?
I think like the most, like aside from the day to day and getting to grow the business and build a team that honestly I'm so proud of. It's things like we have a flight group program. It's like a peer group program, and our conferences, and you get to, for a flight group, we get to just pick a location and go do some meetings. We were recently in Orange County visiting the CertaPro Painters well, CertaPro Painters of Orange County, just south of LA, and seeing how they run things and how they've grown over the last few years. So it's just it's and I was in Lexington, Kentucky last year, and I would never have gone to Lexington, Kentucky, if not for this brand and this business. And so there's close to 400 CertaPro businesses in North America, and one in Guatemala, I guess. But you get to go to places that you never would have thought you were going to visit otherwise, and see and meet so many diverse people who this brand has positively impacted.
That's so interesting and kind of segues nicely to a question that I have, which is what are some of the unique experiences you've had because of your being a franchisee? You mentioned you've gotten to go to unique places, places that you probably wouldn't have traveled to. Some may be more exciting, some may be less exciting, but all of them different and unique experiences nonetheless. What other things what other unique experiences have you had because of your being a franchisee?
Um, yeah, I mean, I feel like one that sticks out to me is our conferences. Usually, there's only a few cities in the states that can handle like these large conferences, and one of them is Orlando. And you know, I've been to Disney World many times growing up. I was lucky to do so, and but I got to go by myself one time recently after a conference. I just stayed for an extra day and went to Disney World by myself for a day, which was an interesting
Nice.
experience. Um, yeah, I mean, even just the places we pick, like I went when we go to a city, we try to find an activity. When we went to Orange County, we went and did like a yacht tour just off the coast, which was great. We did a curling, and I mean, this isn't unique. If you're from Canada, you're like, okay, it's curling. But in Nashville, Tennessee, we went to a curling rink and we went curling, and I got to show everybody else because I did curling in high school what curling's all about, and because they think that's such a foreign thing. So that was a very unique experience for a lot of them. But to go curling in Nashville was fun. And yeah, that's just that. Those are just a few. And I mean, I know we're going to have more coming up, especially as we, as our franchise peer group grows and we get to know each other more. Those experiences become more kind of out there because we as a group just decide what we like to do. So
I love that. And it kind of is great because I know that you are really involved with the CertaPro franchise community. You're on the franchise advisory board, you're on the IT advisory board. How would you describe your relationship with the other franchisees in the CertaPro system?
I mean, I'd say generally good. I would say, I'm pretty close with those who tend to also be quite involved and like to share best practices and share knowledge. I'm maybe seen as a bit of a bull in the china shop to those who don't see it the same way because my messaging to them is usually like, you can try to figure this out on your own, or you can lean on the resources we have. And if you're gonna continue to push back when anybody tries to give you advice or anybody tries to provide you some information or solutions, then yeah, you're gonna have a tough time, and you're probably not gonna like the people who are extolling the brand, who are like, this has meant so much to me, because you're not getting the same experience because you're not putting in the same things. So yeah, I think generally it's good. I when we talk about the franchise advisory board, we get one representative from Canada, as since there's only I think we're 10% of the franchise base and there's only 8 members on the board, so we're lucky to even get one. So I get to represent our country, and make sure that I am making sure that things like the recent tariff situation, we don't get left behind when the franchisor is looking at solutions and ways to help people through that. So that's very rewarding to be able to do that and speak up for our country and our franchisees here.
I think that's awesome to have someone who's so vested in the system, not just for their own success, but for the success of, everybody, and being that voice and being able to share, kind of like boots on the ground. Here are things you need to be considering, or here are things that we need to be talking about. Here are things that we need to be discussing. So it sounds like you're a huge advocate in the CertaPro system, and Canada's lucky to have you. And I think the franchisees benefit by having really passionate members part of those boards who are going to really not just say like all the things that they need to do, but also it's like be a voice of like balance, I think is a better way of saying it. So I think that that's very interesting. And would you say that you were this involved from day one, or was that something you grew into?
I'd say like grew into it a little bit. I like very early on. So we actually put in a new estimating software that we started piloting like the year after I started, and I got involved with
Mm,
that because I've always been very um, interested and passionate about technology, and it's kind of I was lucky enough to grow up right in that period where I was probably one of the first people who it was kind of second nature to. Um, and so I got involved with like an associate advisory board they put together with regards to using that software, and then that I was on that for 4 years until Howard retired, and then I joined the actual IT advisory board, which he had been on prior. So
I love that. So you have expanded to multiple locations. You've dealt with hiring staff, and I think it would be fair to say that maybe you've stepped back a little bit from the day to day of working in the business, and now you work on the business. Let me ask you, would that be fair to say?
I would say that is mostly fair to say. Like that
Oh, okay.
that is we're getting there. That's
Yes.
again, like my team is doing such a good job of handling like 99% of the day to day that yeah, there's it. I do get to take a bit more of a step back and look at what's next for us. Where do we need to focus? What do we need? What needs attention so that we can continue to grow and create opportunity for people.
I think that that is so great, because I know that it can be, business ownership can be an all-consuming. It can be all-consuming, and so I'm really interested to hear more about how you've been able to find that balance and focus on the vision of creating a professionally managed environment. What are some of your operations and management secrets that you've learned?
I think that most of the learnings has been through mistakes. And I mean, I would hazard to say, even now when we're bringing up new staff or we're bringing on new people or people are expanding their scope, I've become more comfortable with saying, they're going to have to make their own mistakes, and I have to watch them make the same mistakes I've made, because sometimes you have to just that's the only way to learn. And so I wouldn't call that necessarily an operational secret, but it's something I've had to get comfortable with. Because especially with a brand where, I always say, like, my name is all over the website, my name is all over this. And my staff, if they wanted to, they can quit and go work somewhere else. I'm trying to build a culture where they want to grow with me and stay with me for a long time. And so I guess ultimately that is the secret sauce, really, is to operations, to sales, to the whole thing is what's the culture? Do people believe that you have their best interest at heart when you're trying to also grow a business? Because obviously business decisions don't always align with the human element. And so trying to keep that front of mind all the time is very important. And, I think that my staff tend to see that, like, when we make those decisions, it's not just about money, it's about accountability. And that's been a big learning too, is holding people accountable to the things that they say that they will do. It becomes more and more important as you add more people, because you can't keep eyes on every person, you can't keep eyes on everything. And so having systems, processes, and focusing on accountability and sticking to those systems and processes is key as we've scaled. And then, yeah, I mean, obviously finding the right people. when we find them, we like I want them to feel valued. I want them to know how special they are, truly. Because it's not everybody who can come into a small business like this and take on that sense of ownership. Um, I would say, it's less than 10% of the population that would join a company and do that. And so even within a small business, you have to have people who feel very entrepreneurial about the growth of the business and feel very invested in the growth of the business, the opportunity that can provide to them. And so that's been everything, is just finding those right people and then giving them the right tools and processes to stick to.
Would you say that when you think about some of the challenges you faced as a business owner, would you say that like staffing has been more challenging than you expected, or are there any parts of the business that you found more challenging than maybe you initially anticipated?
I would say, yeah, HR, not HR, I guess, but like, yeah, staffing is probably ultimately the biggest one. Is, there's different. You got to deal with so many different personalities, and you have to be respectful of people's personalities and preferences. At the end of the day, it's not the me show. It's a team, and that comes with a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different preferences and ideas on how things should go. And I like to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to practice some autonomy and make some decisions and be empowered to make decisions. And if I don't like the decision, we'll talk about it after. But yeah, I think that I will say, like in Calgary, we have I was just talking with someone earlier about how, we were listed as one of the top 5 most livable cities in the world. And obviously that brings with it a lot of immigration. And so we've got a fast growing city, a lot of opportunity here, a lot of oil and gas. Working at a painting company isn't maybe always the most glamorous thing when you're sifting through Indeed to find a place to work. And that's why, that's hard for me, because I know that I've worked at, an oil and gas company, and the culture that I'm trying to help everybody build here is different, and it's more dynamic, it's more rewarding. And so, yeah, finding those right people and showing them that this is the place they should want to work, has been a challenge. But when we find those right people, I like to make sure that they are put in the right position.
I think that is true, true of many businesses, that the talent is difficult to come by. But I think that seeing all the like glass is half full and that you're in a fast growing city. Also, it's really interesting. I think that what keeps people either wanting to go into a job or keeps them there, like money is not the high on the list. Like it's on the list, but like first it's like, are they challenged? Second, it's like, are they the location of the job? The third might be their opportunity to grow and how do they feel valued? And money is on there, but I think that it sounds to me like you're cultivating a really great culture within your business. And ultimately, that's what makes, I think, great workplaces and what will hopefully continue to help you to attract top talent. Um, and so I'd love, even though there's like toughness in business ownership, there's also some amazing parts of business ownership as well. And I'd love to hear from your own words of like, what has franchising allowed for you and your family from a lifestyle perspective?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like we just moved. That it provided me that we just moved into when my wife and I were first looking for a house, we had to move out of the inner city where we were renting, because we couldn't afford anything where we wanted to live. So we bought a house, we started a family there, and recently we were able to buy a house back inner city and move back into a community that we wanted to live in since we moved to Calgary, pretty much both of us. And so that's been a huge opportunity. Even just when we talk about it, it was a family business. It kind of still is. Like my brother-in-law works for us. His brother works for us. It's still very much like we have that network that has provided opportunity for my extended family, not just my family. Um, Everybody, my daughter recently said that she wants her new room painted, but only by CertaPro Painters, not us. We're not going to paint it. CertaPro Painters is going to paint it. And so, yeah, it's just we've got a young family, so being able to go on trips is a little bit aspirational from a being able to do it standpoint. But I'm looking forward to the day where we can actually take some vacations now that we can afford to do a little bit more of that stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's taken sacrifice. It's when you say like business ownership can be all consuming, it absolutely can, and it has been. There's been years past where it took a major toll on my life, my relationship, my family, and I've been lucky enough to be able to navigate through that, and hit a point where it's more for me. It's more about what I say, like work life harmony, than any sort of work life balance. It's not like I'm at work or I'm at home. It's I am technically always working. I always say, like, if painters are on site, I'm working. If painters are on site, my operation staff, they're working. They're on call essentially. And so, yeah, while I'm available 24/7 for things that need my attention, that also means that if I need to go do something at 3 p.m. for my kid, I can do that. So I just blend my life together with my work, and just make sure that I actively prioritize the things that are most important to me, which ultimately are my wife and kids, even though the business has taken the top spot in the past.
No, I think that's really great. And also just like good perspective and kind of prioritization. I think the business is kind of like, in my opinion, like a baby. And so at the beginning, it's like a newborn. It requires a tremendous amount of effort. And, doing it with a franchise, like through the vehicle of a franchise, there's still so much support and guidance that you have, but yet there's still so much that you have to like do and figure out. And, because they're like, finding the right people or dealing with difficult conversations or managing like profitability, and all of these things are important. And so all that to say that at the beginning, I think it needs a tremendous amount of effort, but you kind of have said it a few times. You get what you put in, because if you do a good job of nurturing your business at the beginning and set it up for success, then it does allow you to kind of take more steps back. But I 100% agree that business ownership is, I have yet to see a business, like in my view, maybe they exist, but where you can just be completely absentee and like it just prints money for you. My dad used to always tell me, like, you can't be a vacant landlord and just like expect for things to keep running well. You have to. And my grandfather used to tell me, there's no free meals in this life. You have to pay now or pay later. So it sounds like you put in a lot of the hard, the long hours, and perhaps prioritize necessarily or unnecessarily, we don't know.
Yeah.
But now you have kind of flipped the priorities, and it's great that the business is in a place where you can do that without feeling like you're not doing something you need to do. You kind of have time for everything in the right place. So I would love to ask you for your advice that you would give to a prospective franchisee. If you had someone who is like, hey, Justin, I know that you own 3 CertaPro Painters locations, and I know that you're a franchisee, you're very involved in their franchise system. I'm thinking about franchising. I'm thinking about maybe becoming a franchisee, whether that's with CertaPro or a different brand, we don't know, but they're thinking about franchising. What advice would you give to someone who's kind of at that point in their journey of exploring, is franchising right for me?
Yeah, I think one thing that I wouldn't have necessarily thought of years ago, and like is obviously maybe a little daunting. I always say to my US counterparts that they tend to like pack up and move across the country a lot more than Canadians tend to. Like we don't just decide to move as often. And so like if you find a brand that you believe in and you find like a system you want to buy into that works for you, don't be afraid to move. Like, to be fair, I was lucky that Calgary, that my dad was able to buy into Calgary, and we had a neighbor, which we ended up buying him out, and now we have his territory too. But if this territory is taken, don't be afraid to go move to somewhere to buy the rest. I always say there's a vacant territory in Victoria, BC. I would potentially like to go live in Victoria, but at this point, I'm a little tied to Calgary. So, but yeah, I'd say focus more on like those key things around like what fits your net worth, what fits your value system, and where is does that all align? And so focus more on that and be willing to take that leap and make that jump. And then be ready for that turmoil. Like 2 years ago, I would never have even probably been able to have the time to do this podcast. Like it was all consuming. It was like I was all over everything all day, every day. And so recognize that you will go through periods of that. And yeah, to your baby analogy, like I kind of was snickering while you said that, because I'm like, yeah, we're probably in the tween stage now where like, okay, there's some independence, but you just kind of make sure they're not hurting themselves, and we're growing. And so it is rewarding to think about it that way, because what does adulthood look like, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what would you say, kind of what does the future for Justin, like if we were to look at the next 5 years, what's some of your own growth goals with CertaPro, and where do you hope to be in 5 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, I think like coming back to the city we live in, we at our recent flight group meeting, we were able to look at some of the statistics about like prospect count and how well CertaPro is using the prospects that they're given within their turf. And we were actually one of the worst in North America, because our city's huge. We have access to a lot of opportunity. There's also, I would hazard to say, more painting companies in Calgary than in any other city, maybe in North America, just because of how quickly we're growing and the immigration that's happening. But that opportunity is something we really want to grab hold of. I think we've steadily grown our residential business every year, but we're really looking at how to create some good long-term commercial relationships where we have accounts where businesses are calling us back. They know they're going to get consistent service delivery, and we're able to grow that commercial portfolio. There's not a lot of cities in the CertaPro network or in North America that exist like we do. CertaPro Painters of Orange County probably has the best opportunity because they've got LA right next to them that is all theirs for the taking in commercial work. But there's a lot of commercial work in Calgary that we can expand into. So that's probably going to be a huge focus of ours in the next few years, is building out our commercial team to properly capture the opportunity that's there.
Yeah, I think that that's great. I mean, the fact that CertaPro has both the residential and commercial side, I think is really strong. And what I have just witnessed looking at several systems is that although the maybe the residential side like keeps the door, like keeps the business going, when you get like a really big commercial job, like it's like landing a whale. And so you want to have some of that as well to really balance. And I've seen companies grow exponentially just by focusing and having kind of those two divisions and lifting them both up, because it probably takes a similar amount of convincing and sales to land, a 3,000 square foot house as it does a 30,000 square foot, office building.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we've always prided ourselves on, because a lot of painting companies will, they'll see a small job and they'll say, that's too small for us, or
Mm.
we have minimum job sizes. And we've veered away from that for the last few years, because we see it as like, we're trying to build customers for life. So if I can go paint a door for a little old lady who has no one else who will even show up to paint her door, like what does that do for her life? And what does that do for the loyalty that we're going to get in return? And so, but at the same time, yeah, that $300 job or $200 job takes just as much admin as a $10,000 job, and then that $10,000 job takes just as much planning and admin sometimes as a $100,000 job. So it's just kind of putting our time and attention in the right places to make sure that every customer feels heard. They feel that we didn't just gloss over them or ignore them. We want to make sure, if it ever happens, it's purely because our guys are just loaded up. Now that like May, June is the time of year where I'm like, guys, don't miss anybody, because you will if you aren't on it, because there's so many things coming through the door. Everybody wants to start now. And so, but I never want that to be our attitude. We never take that and say, we're not going to go talk to that person, or we're not going to go hear them out. So we always kind of, as long as somebody's willing to have a conversation with us, we're willing to have a conversation with them. Because sometimes you'll get those requests that are just like, send me a price by email. And you're like, well, I have a few questions. And
Right,
then you
right.
answer your questions. So how am I supposed to do that? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like just making sure that you put the customer and the experience and their care, that they feel cared for, valued, and respect, I think, is like what it is. Like it's like I'm being respectful of like the inquiry. Like I've taken the time to inquire, and you're being respectful by being quick to respond to my inquiry so I can get the information I need and make a next step decision, basically, or make the decision.
Yeah.
So I think that is great. And there are some companies, especially CertaPro being from the outside looking in, like it can be conceived as like, oh, this is just this huge company,
Mhm.
but really not a clear understanding, maybe by some, that every single CertaPro is locally owned and operated. And so I think you bring that care and that heart into the experience, and probably what sets your location apart. And so I think that's great. Well, Justin, I just have one more question that I would love to ask of
Okay.
you, which is, what is one truth about franchising that you know now that you didn't know when you first bought into the business in 2017?
I think the biggest thing for me is that if you find the right, like if it really is like a partnership. If you find the right brand to work with that again aligns with your values, um, CertaPro has said before, like you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. And that was something that only like by putting in what I've put in and getting out what I've gotten out, like it's just a constant cycle of I know, like I literally had a Zoom meeting last week with the CEO, just one on one. And like who gets to do that? And so just have him hear me out and what I have to say, and then take those concerns and bring them back to various groups and action them. I never thought that there would be that level of support and care from a franchisor. Again, it's you get it if you give it, because if you're just a squeaky wheel all the time, you're probably not going to get that same response. But going back to your comment about customers reaching out and with respect and then being responded to with respect, that's everywhere. That's with my own employees. If I treat them with respect and they treat me with respect, I want them to trust that I have their best interests at heart. If I go to my franchisor with respect, they're coming back to me with respect. As long as we operate with integrity, and not everybody's going to give it back, not everybody's going to operate the same way, but I always tell my team too, if I can say that we saw a problem and we solved it in a way that we feel good about and we operate with integrity, I can sleep at night. And so sometimes that means not everybody's happy, but we've
That's
operated in a way that I feel brings integrity. And that same thing carries through to customers, staff, our franchisor, everybody we touch, our own vendors, everything.
Well, thank you so much, Justin. It's been an absolute pleasure to hear about your story, to hear about your just your experience with CertaPro, but also your experience as a franchisee. I am excited to continue to follow along with your journey and see where Justin is in next year, couple of years, 5 years from now. I have a sneaky suspicion maybe it will be in British Columbia, but let's see.
Maybe when I retire.
Yes, maybe, or maybe you'll also have the BC location in
That would be
addition
cool.
to, yeah,
Yeah.
putting it out there into the universe. But thank you so very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I just want to thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's been really fun to be able to get to do this.
Thanks for listening to Franchise Canada Chats. I'm Renée Boudakian with Rubicon Franchise Partners, and this podcast is produced by Joelle Kidd with the Canadian Franchise Association. Missed an episode? You can find Franchise Canada Chats on Spotify, SoundCloud, or wherever you get your podcasts. For expert insights, success stories, and franchise opportunities, visit franchisecanada.online. And while you're there, subscribe to Franchise Canada e-News, a trusted resource for aspiring franchisees looking to achieve their dreams and build their franchise future. If you're exploring franchise ownership, check out lookforafranchise.ca or learn more about franchising at cfa.ca. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time.